Rise and shine, porcupines. It's Algebra with Al time, and I'm your host, Al Rosetti. Today, we're talking about solving absolute value equations. So when you are done today, you should be able to evaluate absolute value equations. Okay, so let's first talk about absolute value brackets. So first we're going to evaluate them, right? So remember, regardless of what the solution is in the end, if it's inside the absolute value brackets, the answer will always be positive. So if you come up with a negative answer inside the brackets, the actual equals to will be positive. So just like evaluating expressions, we want to use an open set of parentheses. And we have 5 times 0.04, well, that's just 2, right? Okay, I'm 20, I'm sorry. And so the absolute value of 20, well, that's 20, right? So here we go, number 2. Negative 9, right? So you know you're probably going to come up with a negative answer. But you know when it comes to absolute value, if it's negative inside the parentheses, inside the brackets, it's going to be positive. But in this case, we got negative 9 times negative 3. It's positive 27. And the absolute value of positive 27 is 27. Okay, number 3. Let's take a look at that. Open set of parentheses, just like when we did evaluating expressions, right? Okay, so we're going to we have the defined values for the y and the z. We're going to use an open set of parentheses. We're going to substitute those values in, and then we're going to do the left side of that minus sign, and then the right side. Remember, the subtraction and addition signs are like stop signs to us. So we're going to do the left side. Then we're going to do the right side. Okay, and take a look at it from there. So we got 9 times 3, right? That's 27, minus a negative 10. Well, just like when we were evaluating expressions, that is adding a positive 10. All right, so we have 27 plus 10 in the end, right? Well, that was a negative 3. I didn't realize that. So it's negative 27 plus 10. That gives us negative 17. But because it's in the absolute value brackets, it is positive 17. When we write equals, we're going to write a positive 17. And absolute value, the reason why that's the case is because when we're talking about absolute value, we're talking about like distance. Distance doesn't have any negatives. People that live in LA, they don't live a negative 300 something miles from San Francisco, and living in the Bay Area, we don't live a negative so many miles from LA. So absolute value, we're talking about the distance from 0 on either side of the number line. And even though it's negative 3 on the left side, the distance is just 3. So that's why we don't have negative answers for absolute value, because ultimately we're talking about distance. Okay, so number 4, there it is, 17 times negative 10, which is a negative 170. It's inside the absolute value bracket, so it's a positive 170, but the negative sign outside in the end ultimately make that answer negative 170, but not because of what's inside, only because the negative is outside. All right, number 5. So we have negative 10, right, times negative 10, that's a negative 100, minus 31, that's a negative 131 inside the absolute value brackets. But because it's absolute value and we are only concerned with distance, the answer there is positive. But the negative outside the brackets ultimately makes that entire answer negative 131. But if we didn't have the negative outside the brackets, it would be a positive 131. Okay, here we go. Number 6. All right, so just like when we did evaluating expressions, we're going to put 8, we're going to put open parentheses, minus 3, open parentheses, right? Close the brackets, plus, then we have 2y plus 5x, open parentheses. So here's what we're going to do. You can see that no matter what we get on the inside, right, it's going to be positive. Okay? So let's substitute in our values and see where we're at. How about that? All right, so when we do that, we have 2. So we're going to do the left side of that bracket, right? We got 8 times 2 is 16. We're going to do the left side of that subtraction sign. We got 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, so 16, right? Minus a negative 9, that's going to be positive 9, right? So we're going to get 25. On the right side, we got 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6, plus 5 times 2 is 10. So the whole thing on that right side is going to equal 4, right? Now look at that negative sign sitting outside the brackets there. You know that whatever answer we come up with, and it's going to be a positive answer, in the end, the answer will ultimately be negative because of that minus sign outside there. And so we got a positive 25 inside there. The negative sign makes it negative 25. And now we go to the second set of numbers. So we have 25, negative 25 plus 4, which is negative 21. All right, here we go. Number 7. All right, so we have 25 minus the absolute value of 5z plus 1. All right, so let's write it out. We're going to put 5, open parenthesis, plus 1, close the brackets. Okay, we're going to substitute in what z is, and then we're going to do everything inside the brackets first. But we're going to do the left side of that plus sign, add it to the right side, and there you go. So 5 times negative 10 is negative 50, plus 1 is negative 49. It's inside the absolute value bracket, so our answer there is going to be a positive 49. We're going to subtract, it's going to be 25 minus 49, right? And in the end, that will be negative 24. See if I got that right. I know I did. I told you I'm never wrong. Unless you're married to me. All right. So, number 8. We got 44 plus 2x minus y in the brackets. We're going to use open set of parentheses. Okay? Negative 2, open set of parentheses, minus open set of parentheses, right? Then we're going to remember that no matter what we get, I see all those negative signs in there, no matter what we get inside those brackets, it's going to be positive when we're all said and done. So let's go ahead and substitute in the values, and we have negative 2 and negative 3. So negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, right? Minus a negative 3 is adding 3. That's what that means. So negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. And then we have 44 plus a negative 1. And ultimately, this whole thing, I believe, is going to equal 43, right? So there it is. Adding, subtracting the negative is the same as adding. Negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. We make it a positive 1 now, right? And 44 plus 1 is 45. I almost made the same mistake that many of you made. It happens. All right, number 9. So 2 times, right? 4, open set of parentheses, close your brackets. Okay, now, whatever we get inside those brackets, whatever product we get, we're going to multiply it times 2. Okay, that's what that means. Even though it's not parentheses, the absolute value brackets, sort of like set of parentheses. All right, so 4 times 0.4, well, that's 1.6. Now, you multiply, you get 16. You count how many numbers are behind a decimal, and in this case, just the 1. So from the right, you move over 1 with your decimal, and the answer is 1.6. But we still, 4 times 4 is 16, then put the decimal back in, right? Okay, then we multiply by 2, and you get, of course, 3.2. Let's look at 10. Nothing really special here other than that negative sitting outside there, right? We're going to put 1 minus 6, open set of parentheses, close our brackets, and we're going to multiply 6 times the value of 0.4. Now, here we go. What is 6 times 4? 24. How many numbers behind the decimal? 1, just the 4. So we go from right to left 1 time, and our answer is 2.4. Then we subtract 1 minus 2.4, and we're going to get 1. What are we going to get? We're going to get 1.4, right? Negative 1.4. Then we're going to subtract 3 minus negative 1.4. Minus negative 1.4. Let me say it again. Minus negative 1.4. Adding 1.4 in the end. Right? So we're going to get 4.4. That's it. So basically, all you have to do to remember for absolute value is everything inside the brackets, no matter what, will be positive, but all the same math applies. All right, now we're going to actually solve equations. Now, look, this is fairly easy to do as long as you remember one thing. Okay? Y plus 3 equals 2. 90% of the time, there are 2 answers to absolute value brackets. Absolute value equations. Why? Because we're talking distance. You can be to the right of something 2 miles and to the left of something 2 miles. Okay? So, when we're doing equations, very simple. We're going to write in that first equation, we call it the positive side, just like it is. Y plus 3 equals 2. We're going to solve it just like we would any equation. We get y is negative 1. We're going to write a second equation. Exact same thing, except we're going to make the answer a negative 2. So you're always going to write 2 equations when you're doing an absolute value. 1 positive answer, 1 negative answer. And there's your answers. So negative 1 and 5. All right, here we go. Look at number 14. 5a equals 10. So we'll rewrite it without the brackets. 5a equals 10. 5a equals negative 10. One-step solution to solve it. Now you're not going to get the same answers because one's a positive 10, one's a negative. So don't think you're going to get the same answer twice. Divide by 5, a is 2. So the second one we divide by 5, a is negative 2. And that's even a rarity to get the same number. So that's doesn't happen a lot. You're going to get 2 generally, 2 different numbers just like you did the first one. All right. So what do? Rewrite the equation twice. 1 positive answer, 1 negative answer, and solve using your inverse operations, just like we did last section. 15, 3k minus 6 equals 2. 3k, we're going to write it twice now. 3k minus 6 equals 2. 3k minus 6 equals negative 2. And solve them independent of one another. But the steps are the same. Start with the answer, right? They subtract 6, we add 6. They multiply by 3, we divide by 3. But you're not going to get the same answer because one's a positive, one's a negative. All right, so here we go. Using the inverse operations, we get 3k equals 8. Divide by 3, and k equals 8 over 3. And it can be a fraction. I know some students get a fraction and they keep checking the work over and over because they think they did something wrong. The answers can be fractions. All right, add 6 to both sides. Opposite signs, we're going to subtract. 6 is bigger than 2. We're going to go with the side of the bigger number, which is 4. Divide by 3, and k is going to be 4/3. Okay? And once again, it can be a fraction. All right, let's do the next one, shall we? And here we go. All right, so we're going to do 16 now. Now here, this is the only time that you are going to get one solution instead of 2. When it equals 0, there's no such thing as negative 0 and positive 0. There's just 0. So there's no need here to write it out twice. You're going to get the same answer. And it's going to be, so we're going to do our inverse operations, right? We're going to subtract 6, all right? So when we do that, we get 2g equals 6. Divide by 2, and you're going to get g is negative 3. And the only time you're going to get one solution is when the equation is equal to 0. So here, one answer, y is -3. Okay? You're not going to get 2 because there's no such thing as positive and -0. All right. So let's take a look at 17, shall we? We have 10 equals, right? 1 plus c, right? So let's go ahead and write it out. 10 equals, to our brackets, we got put our 1 minus an open parenthesis, right? Let's not skip that. Let's not skip the open parenthesis thing. Let's make sure that we're doing that, right? So 18. We have 2x plus x equals 9. So we're going to combine the 2x, right, and the x inside the brackets equals 9. We get 3x, absolute value of 3x equals 9. We're going to write absolute 3x equals -9. Now you could have combined them first. You didn't have to write it out like I did. I'm just showing you that, but we could have gone 3x equals 9 and 3x equals -9. So what do we get? We're going to get x is 3, and we're going to get, in the end, x is -3, right? So here we're going to combine 2x and x, we get 3x. We're going to do the inverse. They multiply by 3, we divide by 3, and x is -3. Okay, so 2 answers, 99% of the time. Now, that being said, let's look at number 19. So we have three types of variations here. We have straight up, we're going to write the equation twice, solve it, have 2 equations. We have when it equals 0, we're only going to have 1. We're going to solve it the same way, but we only have 1 answer. Now take a look at number 19, right? P minus 7 equals a -14. Now I want you to think about that. What am I saying? I'm saying something wrong here. There's something that I'm saying that is not true. So the absolute value of P minus 7 equals -14. What part of that expression or equation did I just say that is not true or cannot be true? Think about it for a minute. That cannot be true. Well, haven't we said that anything inside the absolute value brackets is going to be a positive number? So that being said, how can it equal -14? It can't. The lowest number that it could equal an absolute value is 0. If it equals a negative number, and by definition absolute value means positive, there's no way that that can be true. So your answer here is no solution. So you've got to pick up on that. Just don't let that blow by, because you're going to rewrite the whole problem, do it, have 2 answers, and it's going to be completely wrong because you did not pick up on the fact that it equals a negative number, and that is not possible. It is undefined. All right, let's look at the next one. All right, so we got 2 times what? 3w equals 12. Now, before we can write the absolute value problem out twice and solve it, the absolute value brackets have to be standing all by themselves. Nothing outside it. Everything's got to be gone. And you see the 2 outside it? Now, most kids, when they do that, they subtract it. But that's 2 times 3w, right? We're going to divide it to get out of the way. Now, when the absolute value is all by itself, we will write it twice. And we got 3w equals 6 and 3w equals -6. So if there's anything outside the absolute value brackets on the same side, you got to do the inverse operations to get rid of them before you can write the equation twice. Okay? So then we have 3w equals 6, divide by 3, we get 2. 3w equals -6, w equals -2. 2 solutions. All right, let's take a look at number 21. All right, so inside our absolute value, we have 7x minus 3x. Okay? Now, outside of it, still on the left side, right, is plus 2. That can't be there when we're going to write our 2 equations. So we simply do the inverse, subtract 2 over to the right, and now we have 7x minus 3x in the brackets all by itself, and now we can write it twice and solve it. So until the brackets are standing alone on the left side, or the right side, I guess, for that matter, you cannot write it twice and start solving. So what do we get? We get 4x equals 16. So 4x equals 16, 4x equals negative 16. Using the inverse, we get x equals 4, right? And x is going to equal negative 4. But the lesson here, or the point here, is you can't write that equation twice until nothing is left on the left side but the absolute value brackets. Anything on the outside it, left or right, you must use the inverse operations, perform those to get them over to the other side of the equal sign and solve. All right, so here we go. 22. 4. Right away, you should pick up on the fact that 4 is outside the absolute value brackets. And on the right side, so is what? The minus 1 equals 11. So you have to do 2 steps here before you can write this twice to start solving. So the first thing we always want to do is any addition or subtraction. So let's add 1 to both sides. Doing the inverse, we get 4 times the absolute value of 7 minus y equals 12. Now, we got to get rid of the 4 before we can start solving. So we divide both sides by 4, and that's important. I know most students will put subtract 4 for some reason. There's no plus or minus sign in between. You got to divide it. All right, now we got it to a point where we can solve it. 7 minus y equals 3. 7 minus y equals negative 3. The steps from here are the same, right? We're going to subtract 7 from both sides. We get negative y equals negative 4. You know you cannot end up with a negative variable. So we're going to switch to a positive y. And to do that, we have to also switch the 4 to positive 4. The math behind it is to multiply or divide by negative 1. But I always teach my students, if the variable is negative, just switch both signs to their opposites. I show them the math, but I don't get hung up on it. All right, here we're going to subtract 7. We get negative y equals negative 10. Once again, switch the signs of both terms to the opposites, and y is 10. So what's the key here? Making sure there's nothing outside the brackets before you write it twice. Making sure you know that if it equals a negative number at that time, it's no solution. Understanding that if it equals 0, you're only going to have one answer. Those are the 3 things that you have to put together on this. All right, so here we go. Can it equal 1/2? Of course, it's positive, so sure. As long as it's positive, we can equal it. So now we can write it twice. Now here, obviously, they're making, you do this problem so that they, you understand how to add or subtract fractions and different denominators and all that. Not a big deal. All right, so equals negative 1/2. All right, now, what do? Well, we're going to add 2, right, to both sides, and we're going to get a positive 2.5. Let's just take it there. A positive 2.5. Now we're going to divide by 3. So we don't divide fractions in algebra. What do? We multiply by their reciprocals, right? Sure, it looks like division on the left side, but ultimately, if I write divided by 3 on the right, which I'm going to do right now, what that means is 2.5 times, right, 1/3. 1 over 3, because it's 3 over 1, right? So the math here is what? 2 times 1 plus 1. That's 5 over 2. Okay, times 1/3. Okay? And now let's do the math. So 5 over 2 times 1/3 is what? 5 times 1 is 5. 2 times 3 is 6. 5, 6. Okay, good. Let's do 24. Oh, I forgot to do the right side of the equation on the other one. What are we going to do? We're going to add 2. Now here, think about it. If I have 2 whole pizzas and you take half of one of them away, I got 1.5. Right? I didn't make it find common denominators and do all that. 2 minus 1/2 is 1.5. Now here, because we're going to end up dividing by the 1/3 or multiplying by 1/3, I'm going to make it a mixed number. I mean, an improper fraction. So I got 3/2 times 1/3, right? And I get 1/2. So the solutions to this, number 23, are 5/6 and 1/2. All right. We're on number 25, I believe. Let's do it. Oh, 24. I'm sorry. 24. So 8D minus 4D in the brackets. You can see that we have the +5 to the right of the brackets, but it's still on the left side of the equal sign. So we have to do that operation first before we start solving, right? And we're going to get rid of that 5 by doing the inverse, which they added 5, we subtract 5. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides, right? And we get 8D minus 4D, right? In absolute value bracket equals 8. Now we have the absolute brackets all by themselves, so we can write it twice. Now you can combine it right now, or you can write it out, but we could go 8D minus 4D and just put 4D equals 8, and then 4D equals -8, right? So let's do it. Let's combine them. We get 4D equals 8, divided by 4, of course, and D equals 4. On the other side, once again, combine them. You get 4D equals -8. We're going to do the inverse, obviously. Divide both sides by 4. And in this case, D will equal -2. All right. Just remember, if an absolute value equation equals a negative number, there's no possible way for that to translate, so it is no solution. All right? Okay, 25. You can see we have the 5 outside the absolute value bracket, so you should pick up on that right away. The first thing you're going to do here, you're going to have to divide by 5, right? Then we can write it twice. All right, so here we go. Divide both sides by 5. Now, you may have picked up on the fact that that's a -15, and you may say, hey, wait a minute, that's no solution. But you cannot determine that until you get the absolute value brackets by themselves. When it's all alone, when they're all by themselves in standard form, that's when you take a look at what it equals. And in this case, when I divide 15 by 5, -15 by 5, I get -3. So this is no solution. But if you had just said that right at the -15, that would have been wrong, because what if you'd have been dividing by -5? That would have made it +3, and we can solve that. So you have to wait till you get the absolute value brackets isolated before you can make that decision. In this case, after we did divide by 5, it was still negative. And so, yes, no solution. All right. Absolute value of K plus 10 equals 9. Now this one looks like one we should solve. It equals +9. But let's do our first step first. We got to get rid of that 10. So when we subtract 10 over to the other side, guess what? We get the absolute value of K equals -1. And there's no way anything in an absolute value brackets can be negative. So this is no solution. But we didn't know that until after we performed the first operation of getting the absolute value brackets by themselves. That's it. Well, thanks for being here. I hope it helped. And remember, math, math, math